All right, thanks for joining me today. We're going to talk about grading the Toronto Maple Leafs during the pause. Now, before we get started, I just want to ask you to please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, which will alert you when my next video comes out, which will be about, by the way, the Tampa Bay Lightning. My last video was about the Vancouver Canucks, and I'm also, if you haven't seen any of these, I'm shooting these in reverse alphabetical order. Shooting, not shooting. And I'll put up some links to some of those other teams up here throughout this video. Now, the Maple Brothers. They have been the Jekyll and Hyde team of the NHL this season. I don't think anyone would argue with me on that. There's been some drama. They had a coach firing. They made at least one big trade with LA. Had a bunch of injuries this year. And they're sort of barely clinging on to a playoff spot right now. So let's first talk about where they are in the standings. They won their last game. They're 5-4-1 in the last 10. They have 81 points right now. So they're 11 back of the second place Tampa Bay Lightning in the Atlantic. And they're only 3 points ahead of the Florida Panthers, who have a game in hand, by the way, and are not sitting in a wild card spot. So whoever takes that third spot in the Atlantic may not get a shot at a wild card position because of how good the Metro is right now. Now, they started off the season quite slow. Babcock got fired 23 games in, and yeah, there was drama. It just exploded, didn't it? I think Babcock can still be a good coach, but he just has to change his ways. He better come back as Babcock 2.0, because just the way he was treating players, we all know, was very, wasn't good. Not just this season, but in his career, really. And some of the decisions he made were just off this season, weren't they? And even previously, just look at the playoffs. He got out-coached out of his Bab socks by Bruce Cassidy of the Boston Bruins. Any Toronto fan will tell you, and I just happen to be from there. They're my favorite team. This will be a longer video, by the way. The amount of mistakes that he made when it comes to which players he was playing and so on and so forth. It was time. And Sheldon Keefe hasn't been lights out, but he's definitely been a definitive improvement and in a great decision on behalf of Kyle Dubas. Now, they continued to play well with Sheldon Keefe up until about January, where they hit a bit of a bump in the road. Then they started to have some injuries there to like half their defense, right? Riley, Muzzin, Cece, and February, March were a bit of a seesaw for them. Now, let's talk about the goaltending, because that was sort of the part of the problem in the first half of the season, at least. Frederik Andersen wasn't playing that well, and Michael Hutchinson, man, he's a third goaltender at best. And they went out and they made that trade with LA, and they got Jack Campbell, who's been terrific. More on him in a second. But Andersen, in 52 games so far this season, has got a .909 save percentage. He improved himself in the last couple of months or so. Hopefully that'll translate into the rest of the regular season if it occurs and the playoffs. But he shouldn't be playing that many games too. Like I would say just under 50 might be his sweet spot. And now they have Jack Campbell. He should be playing more than just back-to-back games. This guy, in only 6 games so far this season, mind you, with the Leafs, has a .915 save percentage. In 20 games with LA previously, he had an off-season .900 save percentage, but it was with LA. Yeah, I know they've been playing better recently. Quick has picked up his game and so on and so forth. But the last 2 seasons with the Kings, he had a .928 save percentage in 31 games, and then a .924 the season before that. He's 28 years old. Maybe he's a starter. Maybe. Anderson's only signed for 1 more season. Then he could walk. He could be asking for too much money for the Leafs to be able to afford him. They've got Campbell signed for 2 more seasons for under $2 million. Maybe he's a starter. Or maybe they go out and get another goaltender that's cheaper for under $4 million that can platoon with the guy. It's an option, but it's just that they need to find some money to put on that defense side, right? And that's a good segue. Let's talk about the defense. So Toronto had injuries to Riley, Muzzin, and Cece almost all at the same time, I think, somewhat. Morgan Riley was out for like 23 games. He, after having like 70 plus points last season, he's only got like, I want to say around 27 or so far this season. Plus, he's not playing on the number one power play unit. Barry is. Speaking of which, has definitely had a bit of a disappointing season. Really, let's not sugarcoat it. Yeah, he's got about 34 points. It's not bad, but I think everyone was expecting a lot more out of Barry, especially playing on that number one power play unit. Let's see what he signs for in the open market. I definitely don't think it will be the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then Cece. Cece, why? What are you looking over there for? The puck's over here, Cece. What are you doing? That kind of sums him up, really. Now, surprisingly, he's like a +8. He's got like 9 points, but he's a +8, and he's blocked a few key shots, that kind of thing. But for $4.5 million, come on. Maybe at 1.5 and a bottom pairing, that would be like right in his wheelhouse. I don't see the Leafs re-signing him either way. Sandin, as a rookie, played pretty well. He'll be starting next season. Never mind rookie Timothy Lundgren, who will probably start for them as well, who had a couple coffees this season. I'm not sure he's ready or not. I wouldn't be against him playing in the AHL for one more season next year. We'll see how that goes. He'll probably end up starting with the Leafs, though. But they need to go out and find a guy. I mean, that's no mistake. Just find a right-handed shot defenseman who can actually play defense as well. That would be nice. Please and thank you. Hull has been playing well. And then there's Travis Dermott, who's had a bit of a disappointing year after showing a lot of promise last season, especially in the playoffs against the Bruins. He looked really good. But the good thing is that he's starting to develop in this kind of sandpaper kind of D defenseman. He's a left shot, by the way, but they play him on the right a lot of times to fill in when guys are injured or if they just don't have enough right-handed D, which seems to be the case always in Toronto. Justin Hull's been playing okay. He plays on that shutdown line with Muzzin. So they've been doing well. Hull hasn't had the perfect season, but he's been good. Now, let's talk about the offense right now. So you had a couple of guys who were injured throughout the year, by the way. And Andreas Janssen, who was out now for 6 months. I don't think he'll be back till October. He's a Leaf. He's a guy who the Leafs expected to pot at least anywhere between 20 to 26 goals or so. He might be one of the guys who will be trade bait coming in the offseason. We'll see. And then there was Mikheyev, who was signed out of the KHL for next to nothing, who lacerated his wrist partway through season, who was playing really well alongside Tavares and Marnes on that left wing. He had some pretty good speed. He was a pretty good passer as well. He was good in front of the net, good in the corners at digging out pucks. And he was potting goals as well. So when they get him back for the regular season, which I think they should, he was skating before COVID-19. That should push Kapanen, who was playing in his position, down to where he belongs on that right side on the third pairing. Do you know he only has 13 goals so far this season? This is another guy like Johnson who should be scoring between 20 to 28 goals. Especially with jets for ankles like this guy has. He's been in a lot of trade chatter. A lot of teams look for him first. I think they Leafs rather trade Johnson instead. And I think I'd agree with that. But yep. Spezza has been a really nice surprise for the Leafs as well. He's great on face-offs. He can play center. He can play the wing. He can move up and down the lineup. I know he's 36, but he's also got a killer shot and is an amazing playmaker. They got to re-sign this guy. So I'm really happy he's on the team. Peter Evingel. He's another really great player. I believe he's Swedish. He looks like a gazelle out there. He's so tall, he's 6'5", and he's deceivingly fast, especially when he accelerates. Yeah, I think he's one of the best in the league at exiting his own zone. He's a pretty good passer. He's actually a centerman, but they're playing him on the wing. Maybe he's not quite ready for that yet. But yeah, and then there's Kyle Clifford, who they got from the LA Kings in that trade with Jack Campbell, who's been good. You know, I mean, he definitely brings that grit, the sandpaper, plays on that fourth line, spotty third line duties. He's a good forechecker, good in the corners. I don't know if they're going to re-sign him, though, because that third-round pick turns into a second if they do, and he's making 1.6 this year. I know LA's eating some of his cap this season, but it doesn't make sense for Toronto to pay a guy on the fourth line over, I don't know, $1.3 million, really. And there you have it. John Tavares has been having a bit of an off year, especially the first half of the season. He's been picking it up. How can I not talk about Austin Matthews yet? 47 goals, career year. The kid's young. He's like 22 or something. He's just behind Pasternak and Ovechkin for the lead. He could still take it over. We'll see. And he's got a plus 19. 6 better than any other guy on the team right now. Marner had a slow season as well. He was injured. I think he had a shoulder thing. He's been picking it up. A lot of players kind of dig on him. A lot of fans probably dig on him a little bit because he makes so much money. My God. I like Dubas. I just, he's great at finding players, scouting players, finding players, and the KHL and so forth. I just don't let him sign the big money players. Please get somebody else to negotiate. But yeah, I digress there. They just have, a murderous row after a murderous row. From the first line to the fourth line, they can all score. And I didn't even mention Zach Hyman yet, who's having a career year at age 28 as well. There's no better guy in the corners in the league. He's got like 21 goals so far this season. And I know some people say, oh yeah, a lot of those are empty net goals, 6 or 7 of them or so. Yeah, no one in the league works harder than Zach Hyman at getting those empty net goals. Don't believe me? Google it. And I think that's all. What would I grade this team? I got to give them a B-. I think they're definitely getting healthy again, and they look like they're showing up and more on the positive end than the negative end of things. I don't think they'll get as many points as they did last season. They should make the playoffs, but hey, I would love to hear what you would grade this team down in the comment section down below. Please hit like and subscribe, and consider sharing this video as well. It would really help out the channel, and I'd sincerely appreciate it. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay safe out there, and stay home if you can. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.